the future world, jogging is considered illegal for the wealthy, who have an abundance of time as their most precious commodity. A young man, venturing into the affluent district for the first time, nearly exposes his low status. Quick to adapt, he slows his pace and casually strolls into a luxurious hotel. Eager to blend in, he confidently requests 10 presidential suites from the concierge. Strangely, no cash is exchanged. Instead, the concierge scans his arm with a device, completing the transaction. In this future era, humans have replaced traditional currency with time as their primary means of consumption. Everyone has a unique timer tattooed on their arm, starting from birth and ticking away their entire life. Time serves as both life and currency here. Whether buying a house or a car, it's all paid for with time. Once your timer hits 0, death awaits. But if it's still ticking, you'll live on. Will, originally a broke bottom feeder with less than 24 hours left, has no choice but to work tirelessly at the heartless factory to survive. When payday rolls around, Will discovers that despite a day of toiling away, he's earned less than 4 minutes of extra life when he factors in the work hours. Furious, he confronts his boss, but in this society where the poor are exploited, no one stands with him. With no other choice, Will heads to the bar, seeking out his buddy to reclaim the hour he lent last week. But to his dismay, his friend not only refuses to return it, but also points to a man nearby, drowning in alcohol. A man with over 100 years on his timer, a true wealthy elite. In this seedy bar where killing for a day's time is commonplace, Will knows he's in a dangerous spot. He approaches the wealthy man, warning him of the peril and urging him to leave. But to Will's surprise, the man seems unfazed, almost as if he expected trouble. Suddenly, a group of unwelcome guests bursts in, the infamous time thieves. Revealing the wealthy man's century-long timer would surely invite disaster. Despite the danger, Will grabs the man's hand and bolts, relying on his knowledge of the surroundings to navigate their escape. Before long, he led the wealthy man to an abandoned factory where they could hide. In their conversation, they discovered that the wealthy man had grown weary of the affluent lifestyle that oppressed the poor with time. He contemplated ending his life as a means of escape, which is why he deliberately ventured into the bar frequented by the less fortunate to flaunt his abundance of time. Seeing Will's willingness to risk his life to save him, the wealthy man asked, "If I were to give you 100 years of time, what would you do with it?" After receiving Will's response, the wealthy man glanced meaningfully at the time on his wrist. The next day, when Will woke up from his sleep, he suddenly noticed that his wrist bore over 100 years of extra time, and the wealthy man from the previous night was nowhere to be found. Through a message left on the glass, the wealthy man instructed Will to live well in his place. Following the direction of the glass, Will discovered the wealthy man sitting on the edge of the overpass. He intended to intervene, but it was too late. The time on the wealthy man's arm reached 0, and he leaped into the river below. And so, Will lived on in place of the wealthy man, while the surveillance cameras captured the entire event. With ample time on his hands, Will vowed to make the wealthy pay a painful price. The most direct method was to strip them of their time on their arms. Disguised, he made his way to the grandest time casino in the affluent district. He aimed to make the wealthy lose everything. However, as soon as he sat down at the gambling table, he encountered the president of the time bank, the wealthiest person in the world, with trillions of years on his arm. As the game commenced, the president of the time bank tossed in a chip worth 100 years. To avoid being overwhelmed, Will nervously wagered all the 100 years the wealthy man had given him, leaving himself with just 10 seconds to reveal his cards. If he lost, he would perish on the spot. Fortunately, when Will revealed his cards, he found that he had the winning hand, the highest on the table, securing his victory in the gamble. Despite acquiring 1,000 years worth of chips, Will chose not to continue betting but opted to cash out and leave the casino. This decision impressed the president of the time bank, who then introduced Will to his daughter Sylvia. As they became acquainted, their mutual attraction grew. However, just as Will was leaving after attending a banquet, the time police unexpectedly showed up at his door. They had spotted Will's presence in the video footage of the wealthy man's suicide by jumping into the river. Coupled with his recent, unexplained acquisition of 100 years of time, the chief of police suspected Will's involvement in the case, leading to his arrest and confinement in the police station. Despite Will's continuous explanations, claiming that the wealthy man willingly gave him the time, the chief of police remained unconvinced. Unless they could get a dead man to speak, he paid no heed to Will's defense. Faced with this situation, Will suddenly stood up, knocking out the 2 guards beside him, then dodged the gunfire and swiftly ran downstairs. To safely evade the pursuit of the guards, he took the Time Bank president's daughter hostage and used her as leverage, then drove away from the affluent area. Although the chief of police pursued them relentlessly, he couldn't easily take action due to Sylvia being the daughter of the Time Bank president. In the end, the chief of police could only watch helplessly as Will disappeared with Sylvia into the bustling streets. The next day, Will continued driving the sports car, evading the police pursuit with Sylvia. As he glanced up at the cameras on the stone pillar, he inadvertently fell into a trap set by the time thieves. The car lost control and plunged towards the edge of the cliff. After a strong impact, both of them lost consciousness. Later, the thieves approached them and stole the time from their arms. When Sylvia woke up from unconsciousness, she found that they only had less than 30 minutes of time left. Without a quick replenishment, they would soon die. So, Will thought of using Sylvia to blackmail the president of the Time Bank. Will demanded that the bank president hand over 100 years of time in exchange for his daughter's release, threatening to reset her time to zero otherwise. However, the president not only refused but also claimed that if time fell into the hands of the poor, it would pose a threat to the rich. Between self-interest and family bonds, the president chose the former. Upon learning of her father's callousness, Sylvia decided to seek revenge against the wealthy alongside Will. They drove a large truck and forcefully stormed into a bank's warehouse, looting all the time inside. As they left, Sylvia announced in front of the poor that this was her father's bank, encouraging everyone to seize the time inside. By the time the police chief arrived at the scene, the bank had already been completely robbed. On the other side, Will didn't hoard the time he looted from the bank, but distributed it all to the residents of the poor district. After 3 days and nights of pursuit, the police chief finally cornered Sylvia and Will. He attempted to persuade them to surrender, but Will gestured towards the time on the police chief's arm. It turned out that he had anticipated the police chief's lack of time. As the countdown reached 3, 2, 1, the police chief collapsed to the ground, breathing his last breath. However, at this moment, both Will and Sylvia had less than a minute left on their own timers. At that moment, Will caught sight of a time replenishment machine inside a police car parked by the roadside. He sprinted towards it, racing against the dwindling seconds. Finally, with just 3 seconds left, he successfully replenished their time. The two embraced tightly. In the end, Sylvia chose to betray her father and joined Will's cause. Together, they became time thieves, redistributing wealth to the poor. Under their Robin Hood-like scheme, all the impoverished transformed into the wealthy.